Hello, this is Matthew Chan, and welcome to the newest episode of Courtroom Strategy. And I'm with my co-host, New York attorney Oscar Michelen. And we're excited about presenting this episode today because we're going to talk about a topic that I am particularly passionate about. It has to do with younger attorneys. And why are we talking about younger attorneys? And because we feel that without speaking for Oscar, at least for me in person, a lot of these attorneys are inexperienced. They may be book smart, but when they come out, they really don't present themselves in a way that I feel is very professional or that they even get it. And as a businessman, it's very important to me that they get what they do. But anyway, Oscar, how are you doing today?
Hi, Matt. How you doing? Good to see you again. Excited about doing another show.
Great. So what do you think about my opening remarks? Am I being too hard on young attorneys as a businessman? Am I being too tough?
Maybe a little bit, but there's justification for it. It's a lot to ask somebody to come right out of law school and then they'll be able to solve complex business disputes. But at the same time, certainly, this new class or newer classes of young lawyers are definitely having some problems, negotiating the business litigation, trying to get things done for people is not something that they're used to doing. There are a whole host of reasons why a lot of people aren't comfortable with young lawyers and why they go with experienced attorneys. But, I feel your pain. I see it in court. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and my contention is that anybody that has gone through law school, you've got to be pretty smart. I mean, you don't go through, right. I don't think I've ever heard of a paper mill law school, to be honest with you. I mean, so if you made it through law school, you've got to have some smarts. So that's not the issue, intelligence. Would you agree with that?
Right. I mean, there's different types of intelligence, right? There's certainly people who can read the information, digest it, and give it back to their professors to get the grades and get through law school. But as I even tell my own students, it's the other group that can really synthesize the problem, be creative, and come up with a solution that I think is the group that's more successful at a quicker level. You're probably dealing with folks who, when you're having the issues that you're talking about, probably did very well in law school and understood the cases and answered them well and learned the law, but never really learned how to be effective. And when I teach a writing class here at New York Law School, I try to explain to my students that, yes, I'm grading them on whether it's correct and whether they read the cases, but the number one criteria for a document from me is it effective? Is its effectiveness? And I keep trying to pummel that into them, that it doesn't matter how well written it is if it doesn't get the job done. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you're talking about, right? They may be bright, but they're not effective.
Well, the thing about it is, a lot of people who hire attorneys come from a context of they're business people. I mean, unless you happen to be in a criminal case, of course, but in civil matters, it generally is some business-oriented thing. Because you're dealing with money issues, right? And I find that because they've never been in the business world, they sometimes find it hard to relate. That's issue number one. Issue number two is that in the way they talk, they think that there's no human issues that happen in the courtroom. And they think that, their case is rock solid, this is what the law is very clear cut, and all this stuff. And maybe it is on paper. But I have been in the court many, many times that human issues do come up. Likability matters and all that stuff.
Right.
And no one ever wants to acknowledge that. But me not being in the legal profession, I just know it's true.
Right. And, definitely having trained young lawyers for a lot of years and, as I said, being a professor now and training young law students, it can be very eye-opening to them when I tell them just because you're right doesn't mean you're going to win.
You are so on. Yeah. You are so on. But keep going.
Right. Being right is always nice. It's always the first part, that you happen to be right on the law. But it could be anything else. You're absolutely right. It could be a judge who wants to help out the other side because maybe they're in a tougher financial position than you. I've even heard some judges say, well, it's not fair, like you're a better lawyer than that lawyer. I can't let that happen just because you're a better lawyer. There's other things that come into play, and especially if you're dealing with a jury, a lot of things just fly right out the window.
Yeah, that's going to be disconcerting. Well, this whole discussion today really came off of the article that you wrote on your blog, courtroomstrategy.com. Tell our audience where you were coming from. What sparked you to write that article? I loved that article. I mean, your commentary. It just got me all fired up.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. What I was talking about was the New York Times was reporting that many law school grads were having a tough time, finding work because there's a glut of law students. New York cranks out, about 12,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so it's a big glut. And they're finding themselves kind of thrown to the wolves very early on because since they can't get jobs, they hang out a shingle. Now with the internet, they can advertise themselves as experienced just by and then putting up a web page and starting a blog. If you saw the ages of some of the folks who are blogging, you say, how could you possibly be blogging? You haven't even had enough experience to tell us about. But so putting these young lawyers out there in the market earlier because of the glut has caused a lot of them to really have some problems. And many of them are working in other areas besides the law because they can't make ends meet with the law. But I think that's why you're seeing so many young lawyers kind of out there, their former little firm. They figure, hey, the four of us aren't working. Let's form a firm. We'll split the rent, right?
Right.
And then we'll try to see what we can do. Yeah, and they'll count their internships or their experience while they were in law school and put out, say, oh, I've had experience doing this and I've had experience doing that. But they never really had the case on the line. They've always been working under somebody else, or they were very young and didn't really appreciate what was going on. So, I put the article out there to try to say to folks, hey, listen, number one, really think about whether you want to be a lawyer. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. Just because you're good, arguing in your kitchen with your parents or your cousins or your friends does not mean you're going to be an effective lawyer. You have to have a lot of different skills that come to it, but most importantly, you have to want to do it. That's number one. The law is a lot of work. It's a grind. Even though it's personally very satisfying, there's no easy path to success. And you see a lot of these guys, young lawyers in particular, they consider themselves old and seasoned among their group because they're college graduates and then they're 3 or 4 years post-college.
Right.
They've been to law school. They, don't appreciate that the business person who's been running that newsstand for 15 years has a lot more information, has a lot more knowledge about his or her business than you do. And just because you went to law school doesn't mean you know more than your clients about the law, because the client who is dealing with that specific business on a day in, day out basis, be it, like I said, a newsstand or an online magazine or a photo studio or a shipping company, any of these folks, they've had to come up against the law and they've had to learn the parameters of the law for their business. So, when I get a new client, and I've been practicing 25 years, if it's in a new area that I'm not having dealt with, I mean a new area of business, the first thing I do in the meeting is say, tell me about your business. What are the problems that you face? What do you see on a daily basis that you need a lawyer for? What are the kind of issues you're coming up against?
Yes.
And how has it impacted you?
Yes.
Young lawyers come out thinking, hey, come on, man, I'm a college graduate. I'm into law school now. I did well. I got, good grades. I passed the bar. I'm going to take control of this. And I think that's where the problem lies. This kind of false bravado and the feeling that maybe they're a little smarter than they actually are.
Well, the thing I've kind of noticed, and I don't want to, even though we're talking about the young attorneys, I don't want to single them out because they're really, this isn't the problem just with young attorneys. I mean, it's like young doctors, okay? So what happens is they're very well schooled in the areas that they studied. But all of a sudden, they go out into the outside world. It's like, holy smokes, I've got to actually make a living. You know, and either they can get hired on, so they've got to have good interview skills or some kind to get a job, or if they're going to put up a shingle, they got to put on a whole different hat. You become a business owner, and you're going to have to learn how to cultivate clients and establish relationship, which I think you're excellent at, Oscar. I mean, it clearly shows. I mean, I've seen you in action. I mean, and you're just very good at what you do. But so these guys, they don't get it. I mean, they don't make themselves very inspiring to want to hire them. You know, I got to tell you, it's very painful to watch because they try to be smart in everything. They feel like they got to be smart, and it's not true.
Exactly right. And the other thing too, it's the catch-22. How can I gauge? You don't want to hire me because I'm not experienced, but how can I get experience if you don't hire me? So, young lawyers have to find creative ways, maybe take a little bit of a bite and work for less money for a seasoned lawyer. Find a seasoned lawyer to mentor you in your area. Maybe tag along. Maybe help him do some work or her do some work at a lower rate than you might be willing to accept right away at the beginning, just to learn about the practice of the law. Law is a business.
It is a business. Yes.
And you've got to learn how to balance what you know and with what the client needs and what the client is willing to pay. And so it's a delicate thing for a young law student who's now become a lawyer to try to learn. And unfortunately, it does come with experience. Even me, I think back about cases that I've handled when I was, right out of law school, and I say to myself, "Wow, I wish I knew now." Back then, I would have won a lot more cases, and I would have had a lot better track record. But what I did, and what I always try to recommend to law students is try to get into if you can't find a job with a good, litigation firm or what have you. Get a job with the government early on. Right out of law school, it's an excellent first job for a lawyer because the government doesn't have the luxury of training you for 3 years. You're going to get a quick training session, and then you're going to be in the courtroom in a matter of weeks. So get some experience. You're going to get thrown in. You're trial by fire. You won't learn the business side of the law, but you'll at least learn the effective side of the law, how things play out, in a court of law. And so I think young lawyers do need to try to figure out a way to gain some of this real life experience. More and more law schools, Matt, my own included, New York Law School, are doing clinics for just this reason. What they're doing is they're operating law clinics within their law schools, overseen by professors, where the law students represent clients with real situations, real cases.
Is that right? Oh, I never heard of that.
Oh, yeah, it's
is that just New York?
Expanding. As a matter of fact, no, it's all over the country.
Really?
And
I never knew that.
Every law school is doing it now on a sink or swim basis. That people expect this in law school now. For example, at my law school, we have a securities arbitration clinic. So if somebody invested, $20,000 with a stockbroker, and the stockbroker blew it.
Yeah.
You're never going to find a lawyer to handle that case. Okay? It's too much work. They're going to take a third of the, they're going to take a contingency, and there's not enough money in it for them.
Okay.
So those folks normally would have no place to turn. But now, you take that $20,000 case and you give it to a young law student overseen by a professor, and they're going to treat it like a $200,000 case. Because the one thing about young lawyers is they want to prove their stuff, and they're willing to work and be creative and try to put the time in. So, because they find it exciting. Like, a seasoned lawyer that does arbitration is not going to be excited about a $20,000 case. But that law student with a real client sitting next to them is going to handle it like it's, on Boston Legal. They're going to think that it's the most important case that's going on. So clinics are a very good way for law students to get real-life experience. We have a criminal defense clinic that we help the Legal Aid Society by handling criminal cases for free for people. Many times, as you know from our connection, we get intellectual property cases all across the country. Not everybody can afford us, or not everybody has a big enough case that it's worth investing in, an experienced legal firm like mine. So I advise them, particularly if they're on the West Coast, there's a couple of excellent intellectual property clinics in San Francisco and San Diego in the law schools there that they will handle your copyright claim or your trademark claim for free. And you're being supervised by a professor, and the law students are, chomping away at your case for you. So I would definitely recommend that for law students. It's an early way to have a client, experienced client next to you.
Well, that's great, Oscar. Just switching gears just a little bit. You're a professor, a law professor, and obviously you came up through the ranks. You work your way. I mean, I know your bio. It's a great bio for those of you who haven't read it. You should check it out. Why? I guess let me ask a fundamental question. Why are these young people becoming attorneys? Part one, and number two, were they doing it for the right reasons, or did they just do it for the money and status? What are you seeing out there? What are you seeing, Oscar?
It's an excellent question, and it falls into, I'd say, a couple of categories. For a lot of people who are bright, law is a default profession, a default choice.
You think so?
And what I mean by that is, you got to want medical school.
That's right.
Okay? No one sits around and says, maybe I'll become a doctor. Okay? I mean, it's something that they've wanted. You got to go through organic chemistry.
You don't fall into it. You have to make a big concerted effort to get into that program.
And not only that, you got to start it from day one, semester one, because there are required courses that you have to take right away.
Yeah.
The same thing with an architect. No one wants to be an architect by default. Okay? They either have the skill to craft and design and draw. Engineering, it's all the same. So you find that people say, I'm going to either become a psychologist, that's another default profession, or they say, I'm going to become a lawyer, because you don't need any science. It looks easy, right, Matt? What do? You freaking talk all day, you argue all day. Who can't do that? I argue in the
I guess I know too much.
In the schoolyard. Right. But I'm saying that's what people are thinking. That's the mindset.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have to have any particular I don't have to be handy.
All right.
I don't have to, I don't have to be strong.
Right. You don't have to be physical.
Yeah. I can be able to sit in a chair and think. And who can't do that? I do that 3 times a day at least. So people tend to think it's that kind of thing. They don't realize the work, the grind, the level of effort that it takes to be a good lawyer. So that's one reason it's a default. Secondly, and this was the point of my article, there's this perception out there that it brings instant wealth. And they just think that, I'm going to hang a shingle and, I'm going to make a ton of money. Now, here in New York, the biggest firms, and I'm talking about 500 lawyers, and more.
That's a lot of
are paying about a lot of people, right? They're paying about $160,000 a year to law graduates, to the newest graduates.
Sounds good to me.
Salary.
Sounds good to me.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
Right. So what happens is you got this little golden ring out there, although it's not really, because when you work at the hourly wage, it's probably the same as if you were an assistant manager at a McDonald's, but that's a different story. But so they see that brass ring out there, and they don't realize that the average lawyer out of law school is probably making about $50,000 a year. So you've got massive amount of debt from college and law school.
Yes.
And then you're only
I've
making
heard that.
The starting salary for a prosecutor is like $35,000, $45,000 in New York City. Try to live on that.
Seriously?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very little.
Prosecutors don't make all the. Absolutely, they make somewhere in that range when they start. So it's a difficult thing for them to grasp. But they think there's this financial wealth that's out there. And then the other thing is that they also one of the other reasons is because of television and these CSI shows and Law and Order. They think that you graduate law school and then the next week you're trying a murder case, and they don't realize that you're sitting there and you're trying 200 shoplifting cases before you get to try a felony, and then you're trying 50 felonies before you get to murder. By the time you're doing murder cases, you're 5 years out of law school.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get interesting, experienced work on your own if you're a young lawyer. So I think those are the kinds of reasons. Now, lots of people do it because they want to be in public service. They want to help people. They think they can be good at it. Maybe it's in a family business. So there's a lot of right reasons to go to law school and to do it. I love the profession. I encourage my law students to do it. I think it's a great way to make a living if it's really what you want to do. Mm-hmm. I think if you're smart and you gain the experience, you can definitely be successful and definitely have a very lucrative income and a very nice lifestyle. The thing you need to remember is that it doesn't happen overnight. That unfortunately there is no substitute for hard work. A very famous quote by Supreme Court judges that the law is a jealous mistress. Okay, it makes a lot of demands on your time.
Yeah.
And it never stops demanding on your time. So I'm hoping that young folks who are looking at this and have an interest in law or are in law school now are really thinking about what they want to do with that law degree and are trying to gain experience in law school to make sure that type of law and that area of practice is what they really want to do. Because, it's a lot of hours involved, a lot of sacrifice, and even though there's ultimately a very satisfying reward to that, it requires work. So,
well, obviously, you have an interest in discussing a young lawyer situation because you want to better the profession. You would like to see these, law graduates go somewhere, not just be saddled with this debt and have nowhere to go.
Right.
And my interest is that I would really like to work with more lawyers. I mean, because I do think they're very smart people. They're very results-oriented. So they have many qualities I do like. But the thing that separates from the young guys from the seasoned guys is the young guys are so green and they don't talk the language. They don't interface. I mean, they don't really have the finesse. They don't have like the finesse of an Oscar Michelen. That's for sure. They can't put on the hat. They can't put themselves in the other guy's shoes and so forth.
Right.
And I don't know, does that get taught in law school? I don't know what gets taught in law school. Is it just all law? Is there any human relation skills, clients? I mean, is there any of that?
They have the clinics like we spoke about. We have a class at New York Law School that most law schools now have called lawyering. It's called lawyering. Mm-hmm. We have a class on client interviews, on interviewing clients. We do a number of different things to try to get people used to what the actual practice of law is. I don't think there's enough of it. I still think that a lot of law schools feel that's not their job. They're still tied up to the academia of it and saying we should just deal with these larger, more global concepts and create great thinkers. One of the axioms that's common in law school is we want you to think like a lawyer. So in our writing classes especially, we always are trying to make them think like lawyers. But I think more practical experience needs to be an integral part of law schools. And if you're not getting that at your law school, then you definitely need to get experience over the summers or during school with the real practice of law because there's no other way to do it than to do it and just get experience dealing with clients, getting burned, making mistakes, having some successes, and learning along the way.
Well, Oscar, I'm sure you've heard the term a starving artist. Well, I don't think anybody is served by having a starving lawyer that's always desperate. I mean, we want lawyers, the young lawyers, to actually succeed in their profession and do well. I think everybody is well served in the marketplace.
I agree 100%.
Now, as we wrap up this particular episode, I do want to put out there to the viewers that, Oscar and I had kicked around an idea of putting maybe a workshop together for people that want to, that maybe young law students are graduated and they really, really want to know how to get their foot in the doors, get clients, and really get into people's heads, and basically, find out things that they would never say in law school. Certainly, if you get me in a room one-on-one, I will definitely tell you in no uncertain terms what the criteria is of what people are looking for to hire you, whether you're on your own or whatnot. So I just thought I'd put it out there. Oscar, what are your comments on that?
I think it's a great idea. I'd be glad to work with you on it. I'm always open. People know how to reach me either through my Courtroom Strategy website, through my Facebook page. You can find me. You can email me. I'd always be glad to help out young folks and try to make sure that they're doing it right and getting on a path towards success. And again, I just want to reiterate that if you're considering a career in law, even before you enter it, while you're in college, shadow a lawyer and see what it's like. Learn what the day-to-day routine is for a lawyer before you decide to go into the career and make sure that it's right for you. It was right for me. It's not right for everybody. But if you're engaged in it, I hope to see you there in the courtroom. And good luck with the practice, and good luck with gaining your experience. And Matt, thank you again for another great episode.
Okay. Well, thank you, viewers, for tuning in to the latest episode of Courtroom Strategy with me and Oscar Michelen. And we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you in our next episode. Thank you.